My mom always says that you shouldn't keep a man on too tight a leash, push him too hard, and he'll run the other way. So when Marco started openly keeping a young mistress, I didn't cry or make a scene. I just asked him, "Would you divorce me for her?" He said no, then turned around and gave me a villa as compensation. Not long after, his young model found out she was pregnant. He came to me and said, "Roma wants me to give her a title before she's willing to have the baby. So we'll get a temporary divorce. When she gives birth, we'll remarry." Later, I waited and waited until he and that woman had their second child, but I never heard him say a word about remarrying me. It's fine, though, at least now. Like him, I also have a son and a daughter. Chapter 1. I had just finished preparing baby food and was about to feed the kids when a long-lost message suddenly popped up. It was from Marco, the man I hadn't heard from in 3 years. He said, "April, come back. Let's get married again. Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., at the Civil Affairs Bureau." The words were cold and distant, yet I could almost see his superior, disdainful face again, just like the day 3 years ago when he first asked for a divorce. He had his arm around Roma, who was 3 months pregnant, when he said to me nonchalantly, "Roma wants a proper title before she gives birth. Let's divorce temporarily. When she has the baby, we'll remarry." He said he couldn't wrong her and their unborn child, so he had to wrong me instead. I opened my mouth, wanting to ask him why he could so easily throw away 5 years of our love. But just as I was about to speak, I remembered what my mom once told me. When a man gets rich, his heart tends to wander. But even if he has dozens of women out there, as long as you're still the one in his heart, sometimes it's better to turn a blind eye. I nodded silently, not arguing. I only asked, "Do you still love me?" My question seemed to annoy him. A trace of irritation flashed through his eyes as he replied coldly, "April, we're almost 30. No need to be so dramatic. Love or not love, it doesn't matter anymore." That moment, it felt like I got my answer. And yet, maybe I didn't. I didn't say another word. I packed my bags swiftly, making room for the new lady of the house. The next day, we met at the Civil Affairs Bureau and finalized the divorce. When we stepped out with the papers in hand, he handed me a brand new sports car, his expression sharp, voice laced with warning. "April, behave yourself from now on. Don't cause trouble for Roma. When she gives birth, I'll contact you to remarry. But if you can't behave, forget about it." Not far away, I could feel my mother's eyes fixed tightly on us. The words I wanted to say were stuck in my throat. I forced myself to nod stiffly and replied, "Okay, I'll wait for your call." But what I really wanted to say was, "Don't ever contact me again. Let's end it here." I didn't dare, though. I knew too well that if I said that, when I got home, my mother would cry, scream, and threaten to hang herself, just like the night before the divorce, when she beat me while crying bitterly. "Why is my life so hard? You've finally married into a good family, and you can't even keep your man. How did I give birth to such a useless daughter?" Now, they finally got what they wanted. Their faces were full of satisfaction. Just as Marco was about to get into his car, my mom hurried over from the roadside, handing him a beautifully wrapped gift box. Her tone full of flattery. "Son-in-law, these are eggs from our own hens, good for pregnant women. Take them home for her. Let's hope she gives birth to a big, healthy boy." Marco said nothing, just glanced at me with a meaningful look, one full of mockery and contempt. My face burned with shame. Instinctively, I grabbed my mom's hand, trying to stop her, but she shook me off impatiently and shouted, "What are you doing? If she gives birth to a big, healthy boy, you'll benefit too. Once you remarry, that child will still be your son. What's wrong with me being nice to my future grandson?" Chapter 2. Even now, I still can't forget what she said after that. When Marco left, he looked at me with that loaded tone and said, "April, sometimes you really should learn from your mom, be more magnanimous." I followed his advice in my own way. I sold the sports car and the villa he'd given me. With part of the money, I bought a 3-bedroom apartment and a small commuter car that's easy for a woman to drive. I invested the rest. But sometimes, when I see other families happy and whole, I still feel envious. So I didn't tell anyone. I went abroad alone and gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl, who share my blood. Now, watching my obedient eldest and little one eating in front of me, I put my phone down without replying to his message. I thought that would show him I had no intention of remarrying. Unexpectedly, not long after, my mother came to my house as if she'd won the lottery. Bursting in with excitement, she started rummaging through things and didn't forget to ask, "You're remarrying my son-in-law tomorrow, right? Why haven't you found your documents yet? Hurry and get them." Hearing that, I realized Marco hadn't just told me he wanted to remarry. He'd told my mom as well. I didn't move. I looked at her calmly. "Mom, when he told you about remarrying, did you tell him I have 2 children?" She froze in the middle of digging through my papers. Then she looked back at us and rolled her eyes disdainfully, pointing at my kids. "They're fatherless brats anyway. Just give them away. You don't plan to bring them into Marco's family, do you?" When I came back from abroad with 2 children a year ago, she threw a fit, crying, screaming, even threatening to hang herself, terrified Marco would find out and reject me. She demanded I give the children away. I refused, and quietly cut off her living allowance for 2 months before she calmed down. But I hadn't expected that even now she still hadn't given up on getting rid of my children. Watching my mother, full of fantasies about joining the rich family and spewing abuse at my kids, I sighed softly, took out my phone, and photographed my children. In front of her, I sent the photos to Marco and wrote, "I have 2 children now. Can you accept that?" Marco replied quickly, just a single question mark. My mother's face turned livid. She kept shouting that I'd gone mad and had personally ruined my chance at the rich marriage. I ignored her and set my phone down to continue feeding the kids. Then Marco messaged again, "April, are you trying to mock me for having 2 children? Didn't your mom already say my child is your child? You only sent those photos to piss me off?" Before I could reply, Marco called. I didn't intend to pick up, but my mom was faster and answered. Her expression changed instantly. In a cloying voice she said, "Oh, son-in-law, it's me." But before she could finish, a childish voice came through the phone from the other side. "You wicked woman. My dad would never marry you. We have our own mom. We don't want you as our mom. You're not allowed to come to our house. Yeah, we don't welcome you. If you dare come, I'll beat you until you lose your teeth." Chapter 3. As those childish voices rang out, another voice joined in, gentle, helpless, and indulgent. "Stop making trouble, little ones. Aunt April is a very nice person. She'll treat you as if you were her own children." Marco's calm, husky voice came through the phone. Hearing that long-forgotten voice, my whole body stiffened involuntarily. Suddenly, memories surged up of the day my father cheated, brought his mistress home, and tried to take away our valuables before leaving. That day, my mother trembled in fear before his menacing figure, her voice weak and trembling as she said, "Your son wanted to go to that private elementary school, so I gave you all the money like you asked. I really have nothing left." Before that moment, I had never known she'd given money to pay for the mistress's son's tuition. I was shaking with rage but still stood protectively in front of her, afraid my father might hurt her. He didn't believe she was out of money and roared that he'd kill us. At that critical moment, my mother pushed me behind her, shielding me completely. Marco arrived just in time with his bodyguards, who restrained my father before he could hurt anyone. He used his family's influence to gather evidence and eventually had my father sentenced to 8 years in prison. The night I found out my father would be jailed, Marco came to my house, afraid I'd spiral. When he saw me silently crying over the court verdict, he pulled me into his arms, full of tenderness. "Don't be afraid, April. As long as I'm here, I'll never let anyone hurt you again. I'll always protect you." My mother cried too, through her tears. She said, "April, your father's gone now. You're all I have left. Remember how I shielded you today? From now on, be a good girl and listen to your mother, okay?" Her words crushed the questions that had been rising to my throat. At that time, I really wanted to ask her why she'd given the money to the mistress's son, why she'd lied about being broke, why she'd only given me 100 yuan a month to live on. But I knew it was over. No matter what answers I got, what was lost could never come back. Naively, I thought that with Marco, I'd found my strength, someone who would help me mend the broken pieces of my heart. Yet I never imagined that by following my mother's advice, by giving him freedom and staying out of his personal life, I would end up stabbed by the very blade I had once trusted. Now, hearing Marco's patient tone as he coaxed his children on the other end of the phone, I suddenly felt weary. Quietly, I said, "Marco, I'm not joking. I really do have 2 children. And taking care of them already takes all my time. I don't have any left to play nanny to yours." My tone was calm and even, but my mother was glaring at me, furious. Just as she was about to speak, I reminded her softly, "Mom, isn't it time to pay your beauty salon fees again? If you still can't tell right from wrong, I don't mind being labeled an unfilial daughter again." That shut her up. She didn't dare say another word, only stared at me with bitter disappointment. On the other end, Marco let out a mocking laugh. "April, what kind of joke is this? Don't forget what the doctor said when we got married, you can't have children." Chapter 4. There was nothing wrong with my medical report. The problem was with him. He had weak sperm motility. When I got the test results, I lied, told him it was me who couldn't have children, just to protect his male pride. During the years we were married, I secretly helped him nurse his health, hoping that one day we could have a sweet, lovely baby together. Then one day he brought that woman home, saying he wanted to temporarily divorce me to give her a proper title. At first, I wanted to tell him that it was his body that couldn't produce a child. But then I remembered what he and my mother had both told me, that I only needed to be a good rich wife, stay quiet, and not meddle in things that didn't concern me. So I swallowed the truth and said nothing. I didn't know what was going through his mind when, suddenly, his tone softened. "All right, April," he said gently. "I know you've been waiting for me to come back. It's my fault for making you wait 3 years. Once we re-register our marriage, I promise I'll give you a big, lively wedding, just like before. No matter how grand it might be, it would never go back to what it once was." I didn't respond. I simply hung up. "April, why are you so ungrateful?" My mother snapped. "Do you have any idea how many women would kill to take that wife's place?" I looked up at her coldly, my eyes steady and unblinking. "Mom," I said quietly, "since you have so much time on your hands, maybe you should get a job." Right in front of her, I canceled the automatic family payment link. She panicked immediately, rushing to assure me that she'd never interfere in my life again. I didn't take it seriously. The next day, I didn't go to the Civil Affairs Bureau. Marco called me several times. I didn't pick up. Maybe his pride was wounded, because after a few tries, he stopped calling altogether. A week later, right after finishing my postnatal yoga class, I saw Marco and Roma on the street, locked in a heated argument. Roma wore a simple t-shirt and jeans. Her ponytail was half undone, strands of hair falling messily around her face, which was tired and worn. "Marco, you're really divorcing me just to remarry that bitch April? Don't forget, I gave birth to your son and daughter. How can you just throw me away?" Marco's face twisted with irritation. He shook her off violently, his eyes full of disgust. "Enough. Look at yourself. You're acting like a lunatic. And for the record, April and I have always truly loved each other. If you hadn't thrown yourself into my bed and gotten pregnant, do you think I would have ever divorced her to marry you?" "Marco," she screamed back, "you think divorcing me means you can just crawl back to April? Let me tell you something, no woman would ever take back a man who betrayed her. You think you're some kind of golden prize she can't live without?" Her words cut straight into Marco's pride, and he knew it, because I was no longer the woman who used to obey him without question. That day, he had waited for me at the Civil Affairs Bureau from 8 in the morning until 8 at night, 12 whole hours, and I never showed up. He had wanted to come find me, but his ego wouldn't let him. You crazy bitch." Marco, humiliated and furious, shoved Roma away and raised his hand to slap her. But then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw me. A visible spark of astonishment and joy, like something long lost and suddenly found, flashed across his face. He lowered his raised hand immediately, and just like the boy he once was, he straightened his clothes, adjusted his expression, and walked toward me with that familiar cautious charm. "April," he said, smiling as he jogged over. Long time no see. Were you coming to find me? Chapter 5. His voice trembled slightly when he spoke, filled with excitement. Compared to his delight, I felt nothing but calm indifference. It has been a while, I replied evenly. He thought I was blaming him for not contacting me in the past 3 years, and rushed to explain. April, I wanted to come find you earlier. I really did. But then he noticed Roma glaring daggers at me from where she stood, clenching his jaw. He added bitterly, it's all her fault. Just a year after giving birth, she drugged me and got pregnant again. That's why I couldn't come to you sooner. April, I'm divorced from her now. Please, come back. I've missed you so much. In his eyes, there was no longer the disgust and disdain of 3 years ago, only the same burning affection he once had for me when we were young. Roma saw that look and her eyes blazed with undisguised malice. She stormed over and sneered. Miss April, how desperate are you that you've been clinging to someone else's husband for 3 whole years? Don't you know we have a son and a daughter? The kids can talk now. Or is it that you can't have children yourself, so you're obsessed with being someone else's stepmother? Shut up! Before I could even respond, Marco's face darkened with anger as he snapped. You're the one who destroyed our marriage. Who are you to talk about her like that? When it comes to shamelessness, no one can beat you. Roma's face turned red, then pale, rage and humiliation flickering back and forth. I only looked at him quietly, expressionless. 3 years ago, when he demanded a divorce, he had held Roma tightly in his arms, shielding her from me, as if I were the one who might hurt her. When Roma cried and said she was willing to abort the baby and leave, he had pulled her into an embrace, his voice tender and reassuring. I want both you and the baby. As long as I'm here, no one will hurt you. I'll divorce her and give you both a happy home. His words to her were completely different from the ones he'd given me. To me, he'd said, once the baby is born, I'll remarry you. To her, he'd said, I'll give you and our child a happy family. His heart, too big, yet too small, big enough to fit 2 women at once, but too small to truly love even one. Enough, I said coolly. Stop fighting. My kids are waiting at home. I won't keep you. I stepped back, ready to leave. Marco thought I was just making an excuse to avoid him. He smiled lightly and said, then I'll come with you. I'd love to see these so-called children of yours. He emphasized the word children, dripping with mockery. I couldn't understand, was what I said really so hard to believe? I looked at him calmly. My kids are shy, they don't like strangers. Maybe next time. April, stop pretending, he said, half coaxing, half patronizing. I know you don't really have kids, and I know you're upset that I have too. But don't worry, I've already talked to them. From now on, they'll only have you as their mother. Then, as if offering some generous solution, he added, or, if you think you can't bond with them since you didn't raise them, we can adopt a baby together, raise her as our own. At that, I couldn't help but laugh. I already have children of my own that I'm raising. Why on earth would I abandon mine to raise someone else's? Chapter 6. I opened my mouth, about to speak, when an employee came out of the nearby baby store carrying trash. The moment she saw me, her eyes lit up and she hurried over. Miss April, will the twins be coming for their swimming lesson this weekend? We want to get everything ready in advance. Yes, I said with a soft smile. I might be busy, though. I'll ask a friend to bring them over. Marco's face turned pale instantly. He stared at me in shock, his expression blank and trembling. What twins? The clerk looked puzzled. Miss April's children. Of course. A boy and a girl, adorable kids. I've never seen children so sweet. Her words hit him like a bolt of lightning, splitting him open from the inside. Marco's voice shook violently as he stammered. You really have kids? How old are they? Are they mine? He fired off questions one after another, each word trembling with disbelief and a trace of desperate hope. He must have thought I'd gotten pregnant with his child right before our divorce. The young clerk looked even more confused now, because my children's father is half British, half Chinese, and both of them inherited their father's blue eyes. Marco, on the other hand, is fully Chinese. If I didn't explain that, rumors would surely start spreading behind my back. I didn't care what people said about me, but my children didn't deserve to be hurt by anyone's gossip. We've been divorced for 3 years. I said calmly. My kids are only 2. How could they possibly be yours? The faint gleam of hope on Marco's face froze in an instant. How? How is that possible? He stuttered. You said you'd wait for me. Roma, delighted by the drama, jumped in before he could say more. See, Marco? I told you she wasn't the saint you imagined. She never waited for you. Look at her now. She's got kids with someone else. Shut up, Marco roared, his smile vanishing completely. His eyes were red, filled with disbelief and wounded pride. He grabbed my hand, trembling, his voice cracking. April, tell me this isn't true. You said you'd wait for me. Yes, I had said that, but only because I'd had no choice. For so long, I had wished my mother would wake up one day, that she'd learn how to love me the way other mothers did. But after Marco and I divorced, the only thing she ever said to me was, "Has your son-in-law come to find you yet? Did he say when you'll remarry? Don't just sit around doing nothing. Go remind him you exist. What if he forgets about you? What'll you do then?" At the time, I'd asked her, "So, in your eyes, is life impossible without a man?" I thought I could make her happy through my own efforts, that we could still have a good life, even without one. But she never felt it was enough. She just looked at me in exasperation and said, "You only have a real family when there's a man. If you and that husband of yours hadn't gotten your father locked up, would people call me a living widow?" It was then that I finally understood. She had always blamed me for not signing the letter of forgiveness, for letting my father go to prison, and because of that, I woke up completely, whether it was family or love, if it wasn't truly mine. I didn't want it anymore. Marco, seeing me stay silent, finally lost control. His voice broke into a hysterical scream. "Say something. When I brought Roma home, you didn't even care she existed. You agreed to everything. Why go back on your word now? Or is this just your way of getting revenge on me?" Chapter 7. I did care. The first time I discovered Marco flirting with another woman on his phone, I broke down. I cried. I yelled. I went mad. I couldn't understand. How could someone who said he loved me just yesterday spend today arranging a hotel room with another woman? That night, I lost control. I smashed everything in the living room, thinking my fury would make him feel guilty, make him regret what he'd done. But when he looked at me, his eyes were full of irritation and disgust, the same look you'd give a crazy woman making a scene in the street. He asked coldly, "April, are you done yet?" And I screamed back, "No." Not long after, he called my mother, asking her to talk some sense into me. She rushed over, saw me trembling like a lunatic, and before saying a word, slapped me hard across the face. Then she shouted angrily, "April, have you lost your mind? Do you even want this marriage anymore? He just made the same mistake every man makes. What's so unforgivable? Why can't you just let it go?" Standing there, facing the two of them, so perfectly in sync, the burning sting on my cheek slowly cooled my rage. I said to him, "Let's get a divorce." Before Marco could even respond, my mother began slapping herself hysterically, crying and shouting, "If you dare divorce him, I'll kill myself right here." He knew, no matter what happened, my mother would always take his side. After that, every time we argued, he would use her as a weapon, a shield to silence me. Even the day he brought Roma home, he called my mother over, afraid I'd make another scene. So now, when he demanded to know why I'd gone back on my word, I tilted my head slightly and asked, "Do you really not know why I agreed?" My words struck him silent. A flicker of guilt flashed in his grief-stricken eyes. "April, I only did all that because I didn't want to truly lose you," he said desperately. "If your mom hadn't come that day, would we have been able to talk calmly? We were just hurting each other, destroying what we had without meaning to." How ironic. Even I can't remember when it started, when we went from sharing everything to having nothing left to say. And yet, in that silence, he still feared ruining our love. "Marco," I said softly, "don't you think what you're saying is ridiculous?" "April, Please. Before he could finish, my phone rang. It was the nanny calling. She said the children had woken up and were crying for their mother. The sound of their sobs through the phone made my heart tighten painfully. All I could think about was getting home. My kids are awake, I said, cutting him off. I don't have time to listen to your excuses. Marco, let's just end this here. Don't come looking for me again. Without another glance, I turned and walked away. Marco tried to follow, but Roma stepped in front of him, shouting furiously. She already has kids, she already has a family. Do you really think she'll abandon them to come back to you? Don't be so naive, Marco. I didn't hear the rest. My mind and heart were already somewhere else, with the little ones waiting for me at home. Chapter 8. Nighttime. After washing up, I lay on the bed, telling my baby a bedtime story. Out of nowhere, Roma sent me a video of her children. A bad feeling instantly rose in my chest. I clicked on it instinctively, only to see two thinly dressed kids kneeling in front of their house, crying and praying. Auntie, please don't take my dad away. My mom and I really need him. Yeah, Auntie, please stop seeing my dad. My brother and I can't live without him. They cried as they knelt and kowtowed, their little foreheads bruised from hitting the ground. My heart tightened at the sight. Roma did this, obviously to trigger my empathy as a mother, but children are not tools for winning sympathy. Besides, I had long given up on Marco. I had no intention of ever remarrying him. As I was thinking about what to do, Roma sent another message. She said, Miss April, you're a mother too. You should know how to make choices for your child. If you want your kid to live with the shame of being a homewrecker's child, then go ahead and ignore my message. Her words were a blatant threat. I was so angry I laughed. Then I took screenshots of her video and her messages and sent them to Marco. I wrote, control your wife and kids. I don't want this kind of thing happening again. Marco replied quickly. He seemed a little desperate. He sent me a voice message. I'm sorry, April. I didn't know she would send you that. I'll take care of it. Don't let it bother you. April. Mom told me your child was born through IVF, so there's no father. I'm willing to take responsibility, to be there for you both. Please think about it and give me a chance to make things right. Hearing that voice message, my hands trembled with anger. I had told my mom clearly not to get involved in our affairs anymore, yet she still couldn't stop meddling. I didn't reply to Marco. Instead, I canceled all the memberships my mother had under her name in different places, and froze all her bank cards. Over the past 3 years, I'd given her 1/3 of what I earned from my investments, just so she could live peacefully in her later years. But since she refused to live in peace, then she wouldn't live that life anymore. After handling that, I transferred half of my assets under my children's names. The agreement would only take effect once they reached adulthood. It was my way of leaving them some security. When my mom realized her cards were frozen, she came storming to my place, furious. April, what's the meaning of this? Are you cutting your mother off? I raised you with my own 2 hands. If I'd known you'd turn out like this, I shouldn't have given birth to you. Her accusations didn't move me. I took out a pre-written severance agreement and a bank card, and told her, sign this agreement, and I'll give you 1 million. Her face turned red with fury. Before she could explode, I continued, or, you can sue me. I'll pay you a fixed amount of alimony each month as the law requires. Other than that, I won't give you a penny, and I won't take care of you anymore. Hearing that, my mother froze on the spot. She never imagined I'd be so resolute. Her voice trembled as she asked, April, are you serious? Are you really abandoning your mom? Chapter 9. She was the one who abandoned me first. I kept my expression calm, gave her no face, and fired back. Do you want to throw me away? When you belittled me in front of Marco, did you ever think I was your daughter? When you looked down on my children and tried to send them away, did you ever think they were your grandchildren? She can be unusually tolerant toward children born of the other woman, yet she can't even manage a smile for my kids. My words left her dumbfounded. For a long time she couldn't form a whole sentence. Sign it, 1 million. That's enough for you to live on from now on. No. April, everything can be negotiated. I'm your real mother. I gave birth to you and raised you. You can't treat me like this. I know I was wrong. I won't stick my nose in your business anymore. I'll stop meddling. I'll even help look after the kids. I'd heard these lines more than once. I shook my head. Mom, you only have two choices. In the end, she had to choose between living the rest of her life in poverty or in comfort. She picked the latter. When she left with the money, tears welled at the corners of her eyes. Shaking, she said, April, it isn't that I must have your money. I just need to secure my future. If you ever need me, remember to come to your mother. I'll help however I can. In the end, she still liked to paint grand promises, say impossible things. I paid them no mind and threw them out of my head. When Marco found out, he realized he no longer had any backup. He quietly bought some diapers and formula and came to see me. Seeing him arrive burdened with bags, I couldn't help frowning. What are you doing here? I asked. April, I haven't met your child. These are the types my kids use. I don't know if they'll suit yours. Take a look, if not, I'll buy something else. He nervously explained what he was holding. Worried I'd refuse, he added, these are for the kids. It's just a little something I prepared. Even if you won't accept it for my sake, please consider the children. What my child needs, I'll buy myself. I don't need your things. Take them away. My tone was peaceful but distant. Marco seemed not to hear me, like he was offering treasure. He thrust forward a scrappy paper bag. He went on by himself. This is the mung bean cake you used to like in high school. The seller's still the same after all these years. The taste hasn't changed. Try it. The vendor hadn't changed, and the mung bean cakes tasted the same. But we had already changed. I didn't take it. I looked at him coolly and said, you know I made my mother sign the renunciation of relations, right? If I can abandon my own blood, what makes you think I'd have to choose you? He had been the one to give me hope, and he was the one who'd brought me despair. What right did he have to ask for my forgiveness so easily? After I said that, a vicious satisfaction crept up in me. I continued. Last time you said I had a problem and couldn't have children, but I went abroad and succeeded with just one round of IVF. Guess why? Marco, isn't it possible that your precious child is the karmic retribution for betraying our marriage? I've never pretended to be a saint. The first time I discovered his affair, I had hoped, cruelly, that he would get what he deserved, that everything he wanted would forever be out of reach. Chapter 10. A single sentence from me woke Marco up. He stared at me with wide, incredulous eyes, stepping back as he muttered incoherently, it can't be, what you're saying isn't true, those two children should be mine. If you don't believe me, get a test done. You'll see if you're the one with the problem. With that said, I didn't spare him another glance. I shut the door mercilessly. It didn't take long for the news to spread. Marco had taken the two children to the hospital for a DNA test. The results confirmed that they shared no blood relation. Out of his mind, Marco went to find Roma to demand an explanation. When she found out, she tried to escape, but Marco's men caught her before she could. When Marco entered the room where they had locked her up, he was seething with rage, the report in his hand. You damned woman, what do you have to say about this? He threw the report at her face in fury. Roma, realizing she had no way out, broke down and let out a mocking laugh. Explain myself? And what exactly should I explain? From the beginning, I only said I was pregnant. I never said the child was yours. You were the one who chose to believe it. How is that my fault? Marco's face turned completely dark. Rage devoured him. He grabbed her by the neck with brutal force, growling through gritted teeth. Damn whore! If you hadn't crawled into my bed and shown me that ultrasound, I would never have believed that bastard was mine. Thinking about how he had destroyed his marriage with me because of a woman like her, his fury consumed him. His hands tightened more and more. Roma's face turned pale, and soon her skin took on a purple hue from lack of air. The two children, hearing the noises from the room, ran inside. Seeing the scene, they cried and tried to pull Marco away. Dad, let Mom go. Don't hit her. Before, Marco always gave them everything they wanted, because he thought they were the miracle life had granted him. But now, he had found out neither of them was his child. Get out of here! With bloodshot eyes, he kicked them away mercilessly and shouted, You two bastards have no right to call me dad. Shut up! Roma, seeing her children fall to the ground crying, felt a stab of pain and screamed in desperation, "Ma! Marco, if you're angry, take it out on me, but don't hurt my children." Then, between sobs, she looked at her trembling daughter in the corner and shouted, Nan, call Daddy Lee. Tell him Marco's gone crazy. He wants to kill us." When Marco heard that, an absurd thought filled his mind. Trembling, he asked, "Those bastards, are they Luis's?" Luis, his best friend. Since Marco had returned to work at the company, he had hired Luis as his personal assistant. He never imagined something so grotesque. "Yes, so what?" Roma sneered. "You're an incomplete man, and you still expected me to stay faithful to you? Keep dreaming." That night, Marco lost his mind completely. No one in the house, not even Luis, who rushed over after receiving the call, made it out alive. When the police arrived, alerted by Marco's own call confessing what he had done, they found him covered in blood, sitting at the doorway, utterly defeated. To the officer's questions, he replied in a hoarse voice, "I'll wait for my lawyer. I'll go with you when he arrives. Just give me a few more minutes." Days later, an unfamiliar lawyer came to see me. He said, "Miss April, Mr. Marco drafted a share transfer contract the same day he turned himself in. He left everything he owned to you. He said it was what he owed you, and he asked me to tell you, he's sorry." Marco had committed terrible acts. He knew he would never leave prison again. That document wasn't just a transfer of property, it was his will. I received the contract, thanked the lawyer, and turned toward the nanny pushing the stroller. Inside, my two little ones looked up at me with pure, radiant smiles. It felt as though life was finally reaching out its hand to me. I put the contract away, smiled softly, and walked toward them. "Little ones, let's go home."